Someone says, "We need to talk." 4 words, your thumb still hovering over the screen, and the bottom falls out of you. That cold, scooped-out plunge behind your navel, a full second before you've reasoned out why you should be worried. Ask anyone what just happened and you'll get the same answer. Adrenaline, fight or flight. Case closed. And they're not wrong exactly. The chemistry really is there. But that answer quietly skips 2 questions it can't handle. First, where? Adrenaline floods the whole body. So why does fear keep choosing your stomach as its mailbox? Second, when? Why does the drop arrive before the thought, not after? The where and the when. And the obvious answer solves neither. What does solve them is a chain of discoveries that runs from a 19th century X-ray experiment to an organ in your belly holding more neurons than your spinal cord. We've called it a gut feeling for as long as we've had language. We just never knew how literally we meant it. The answer changes what we think a feeling even is. Start with the timing, because that's the part that should bother you. Adrenaline is a messenger. It travels everywhere your blood goes, your hands, your scalp, your face. A messenger doesn't have an address. So why does dread always find the same one? Not your knees, not your elbows, your gut. Every time. To understand that, you have to stop treating the drop as a feeling and start treating it as a mechanism, something with moving parts, in a specific order. The first person to actually watch those parts move was a young Harvard medical student named Walter Bradford Cannon. In 1896, Cannon got his hands on a brand new tool. X-rays had been discovered only the year before, and he did something nobody had thought to do. He used them to watch the stomach work from the inside while an animal was awake. He could see the rhythmic churn of digestion in real time. And then he noticed something he wasn't looking for. Whenever the animal showed signs of anxiety, rage, or distress, the churning stopped. Cold. Digestion simply switched off. Cannon chased that observation for the next 2 decades, and in 1915, by then head of physiology at Harvard, he gathered it into a book, Bodily Changes in Pain, Hunger, Fear, and Rage, and gave the reaction the name we still use, fight or flight. Sit with what that means. The first thing fear does to your body isn't a feeling at all, it's mechanical. Fear reaches into your stomach and turns it off. The emotion you think you're having begins as an organ going still, but knowing digestion stops doesn't explain the sinking. For that, the where, you have to follow the blood. When your nervous system registers a threat, the sympathetic branch fires and your adrenal glands flood the bloodstream with adrenaline. One of the first things that adrenaline does is squeeze the vessels feeding your digestive organs. Blood gets pulled out of your stomach and intestines and shunted toward the big muscles in your arms and legs and toward your brain, the parts that run and fight and decide. Your gut, in the most literal sense, is drained, and in autonomic physiology, that redirection is both fast and sudden. Now, feel what that actually is. That hollow, scooped-out plunge, the floor-tilting drop, is not a metaphor your mind invented to describe fear. It is the physical sensation of blood leaving your midsection on a hair trigger. The emptiness is real emptiness. That's your where. Fear lands in your gut because your gut is the organ it empties first. But that's only half the puzzle. We've explained the address. We still haven't explained how the drop beats your own mind to the threat. Think about the last time you flinched. A door slammed, a shape moved at the edge of your vision, and you were already recoiling, heart slamming, stomach tight. And only a full second later did your thinking mind catch up to murmur, "It's nothing. It's just the wind." Notice the order. The body moved first. The understanding arrived late, panting, trying to explain a decision it never made. The man who mapped why was the neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux. In his work on the brain's fear circuitry, summarized in his 2000 paper in the Annual Review of Neuroscience, Ledoux traced 2 separate roads a frightening signal can take. There's a slow road, the high road, where information climbs up to the cortex. The conscious thinking part gets identified and only then triggers a response. And there's a fast road, the low road. On the low road, the signal runs from the sensory thalamus straight to the amygdala, the brain's threat alarm, and fires the body's defenses before the cortex has been told anything at all. In Ledoux's own illustration, you jump back from the stick before you've realized it isn't a snake. That's your when. The drop in your gut runs on the low road. It is wired to arrive before you know what you're afraid of, because in the arithmetic of survival, the half second you'd spend identifying the threat is a half second you might not survive. Your body would rather be wrong and alive than certain and dead. So now you have both answers. The where. Blood drains from the gut. The when, the low road fires before conscious thought. You could stop there and feel satisfied. But there's one more layer, and it's the strangest of all. Because so far, we've talked about the gut as a victim, a passive thing that gets emptied and shut down. It isn't. The wall of your gut contains its own nervous system, its own dense web of neurons running the length of your digestive tract, complex and independent enough that the researchers who study it gave it a name, the second brain. The term was popularized by Michael Gershon at Columbia University, who helped found the field and wrote a book by that title in 1998. And the scale is genuinely hard to hold in your head. By modern counts, summarized in a 2022 review in Physiological Reviews, the gut wall holds an estimated 500 million neurons. That's roughly 5 times as many as your entire spinal cord. So the organ that takes the hit when you're frightened, the one being drained, the one going still, is no bystander. It is the largest collection of neurons in your body outside your skull. When fear lands in your gut, it isn't landing in dead meat. It's landing in something built to think. And here's the detail that ties all of it back to you. The vagus nerve is the great cable connecting that second brain to the one in your skull. You'd assume it mostly carries orders downward, the head commanding the gut. It's the opposite. Roughly 80% of the vagus nerve's fibers are afferent. They carry signals up from the gut to the brain. Only about 20% run the other way. Your gut is wired, overwhelmingly, not to take orders but to report. It spends most of its bandwidth telling your brain how it feels, which means trust your gut was never poetry. It was a description of the wiring. The information really does travel up, from there to you. Here's the one thing all this careful tracing still can't settle. We can map every wire. We know the digestion stops, the blood drains, the low road fires, the second brain reports up the vagus. What scientists still genuinely argue about is the direction of the whole thing. Does the sensation in your gut create the feeling of fear, or does the fear create the sensation? It's the century-old standoff between the James Lange and Cannon-Bart theories, revived more recently by Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis, the idea that those gut signals actively steer your decisions before you've consciously reasoned anything out. It's still contested. We can read the report. We still can't agree on who's writing it, but the chain itself is not in doubt. It was never one thing that drops your stomach. It was a reflex that stops digestion, a flood of adrenaline that drains the blood, a sub-second shortcut that fires the body before the mind, and an organ of 500 million neurons that feels the hit and reports it upward. All of it unfolding in sequence, faster than you can think the word, afraid. So think about every phrase you've ever used and never examined. Butterflies before you walked on stage. The clench the instant before you opened a message you were dreading. Something gut-wrenching. Knowing it in your gut. Not being able to stomach it. You thought you were speaking in figures of speech. You were reading off your own anatomy. The language knew the address and the timing long before the science could prove either. So the next time the bottom drops out of you, before you've understood why, before a single word has formed, remember what that really is. It isn't your mind being dramatic. It's your second brain, the oldest watchman you own, sounding an alarm it has sounded in every frightened ancestor for as long as there have been guts to drop. Your gut feeling was never a metaphor. It's just the part of you that knows first, and it has been waiting your whole life for you to finally listen.